It was already in the 70s of the last century that I was for the first time confronted with something like prenatal psychology. And I was a little bit booming in that time, and leading there was Ronald Lane, the
Yeah.
London psychiatrist. And they started to ask me questions. Actually, it was the reverse of what people think. People think that I started to study if an embryo is able to have experiences or has consciousness. No, the question came from the prenatal psychologist because they asked me, how is it possible that we see in our consultations with patients that in a deep past, when they are still in the womb, might have had, traumatic or other experiences. How is that possible for an embryo? Because the embryo doesn't have a brain, there are no sense organs. And that is why I started to ask myself the question, how could it be with consciousness and awareness and soul? And that is why I started to develop kind of embryology that, so to say, is complementary to the regular embryology. Regular embryology is for many medical students, for example, it's a disaster. It's a huge amount of facts and no relationship between all these facts. Are terrible. They hated it.
Mhm.
And I was interested because I discovered that the best way to look at the embryo was to discover that it's not a static body. It's not, a spatial bio construct that is working or doing. No, it is shaping. It is a process in time. And therefore, the first time I discovered that our body is not anatomy. I was also anatomist in those days. That was more or less a combination, anatomist, embryologist. And as an anatomist, I was so um, accustomed to see the body as a construct, a fabrica, as we call it in anatomy, of organs, and that the organs work together. But it's a spatial thing. That's why many people, compare the human body with a machine. But the embryo shows something else, and that is that the parts, the organs, the cells, the particles are not the primary. The primary thing where everybody starts with is a body, a wholeness. And that wholeness is starting to be differentiated into particles, in organs, in cells. So it came out to me that what is an embryo doing? At least it is in motion. Embryo in motion was the first years I called my courses like that. Our body is a process, and the embryo, therefore, is not a past, it is actuality. And the odd idea is that the embryo develops a body, and then the body becomes functional and it starts to function. Like your father maybe told you that you start as a fertilized egg cell. Forget it. You do not start as a fertilized egg cell. You start as a zygote. And a zygote is not a cell. A zygote is a human body. We start as a unicellular body. So from the beginning on, you are a body. But your father told you that you started as a cell. That's a mistake. That's a very observational mistake. It's an error. I don't see that. I see a unicellular body. Yes, it comes from a huge egg cell. And then it starts to be subdivided, suborganized in trillions of cells. And these cells differentiate. And there comes organs, and then there comes a whole body, and then the body starts to walk and to speak and to go to school, to write book. Voila, Jaap van der Wal. That is what many people think. That you are caused or produced, that you are the result, that you are, so to say, the result of all these cells and organs, and that is not. You are from the beginning on shaping, performing this body. Your body is a process. Like every living being, you appear in time. You have a time body. In anthroposophy, we call that the etheric body. It's what every living being has. That's the biggest difference between a living being and a machine or a physical body or a crystal, because that is form, that is shape. But living beings are processes in time. And then I, started to be awake, because it means that that embryo is not past, you are still embryo. Every morning you wake up with a new body. Now, some organs have completely changed, even in your brain. You start with new wirings or new synapses or whatever. So your body is constant on the move. It's a process. So I started to discover that if I want to understand if an embryo has consciousness or experiences these things, I have to watch the adult body itself. And then I learned from my students and from my experiences on the dissection room that we all nowadays have a false, no, not wrong, not false, more reductional or reduced idea about our body. We think that we are a spatial structure, that we are built up from organs. And that is not the case. You are still performing, you're still shaping your body. And then I learned, and that was a big inspiration from Mr. Eric Blechschmidt. He was the first great human embryologist. And he taught me, you have to watch what is an embryo doing. It is growing, yes, but it's also moving, it's organizing, it's a Gestaltung in German. It is shaping, it's a performance. And then he says, you could consider that the way the embryo is shaping the body is a kind of pre-exercising of what you later can do physiologically with the body. And then I started to discover that yes, the processes, the gestures with which you shape and perform your body are the same gestures that you, so to say, perform when you walk and do and think, and when you, in your physiology, it are the same gestures that you perform in your soul life. So, and that was the word that was critical. Pre-exercising. Maybe everything what in your soul you now are so aware of, your thinking, your thoughts, your feelings, is, so to say, a transformation of what you first had to do morphologically. Our body is behavior. Our physical body is behavior. And that comes later, appears as a physiological appearance, a physiological way of being, and then the psychological way of being. And the key that links together is gesture. So if I could find out or discover or prove or show that also as an embryo, you have a soul working in you, a consciousness, a mind working in you, but the mind, the soul is still involved in shaping the body, so that it later on can perform in the physiological way, and then in the psychological, maybe even the mental way. Don't think that you breathe for the first time when you're born. I could show you that with slides, but I don't do that now because then you have to open a whole PowerPoint. But breathing is that you can inspire your lungs, and then you let it go, and you take in the world, and then you breathe out. But when you're born, everybody think that's the first time. No. You could not breathe at birth when you have not pre-exercised that in the 6th week of your life. In the 6th week of your life, you don't have lungs. Your whole heart is filled with your whole thorax. There's not really a thorax, but the whole thoracic space is filled with the heart. The heart is the first organ, an enormous beating organ. And the whole body is beating with it in the rhythm. And behind that heart Maybe I could show you on this slide, you know, this is the heart, this red. And behind that heart, there in green, is a very small vesicle. And that's all they have on your lungs. That's all the lung you have when you're 6 weeks old. But then you start to raise your head. You deflex your head. And then the liver goes down and follows your pelvis. And then we see that the ribs are opening. Your thorax is creating a space. And in less than 2 weeks, you see out of that little vesicle, the lung vesicle, there come 2 vesicles, 4 vesicles, 8, 16. And in less than 1.5 weeks, you breathe in there millions of lung vesicles. Do you see how you now shape your lung? With the gesture of inspiration. Inspiration. Inspiration is a gesture with which you shape yourself a room, a space, and take the world in. And when you're born, you repeat that, but now you do it physiologically. And isn't breathing not also a gesture of the soul? I think that half of the people that are in the waiting room for the psychologist are people that cannot breathe. Sociologically, psychologically. They cannot breathe because they are obsessed by themselves, or they are only oriented to the other. And that is what I discovered. That consciousness, if you have it, soul, if you have it, it is first performing your body, a human body with which you can go upright. And going upright is more than being a straight being. No, going upright is a gesture of your soul. We always think that the child for the first time comes upright when it is 1 year old. And mother phones father and tells, she came upright, she stands on 2 feet for the first time. No, it's not the first time. It's pre-exercised from the 6th to the 10th week. And it's a very important human gesture. Only humans do it. Coming upright, coming in the vertical, coming in the balance, coming to yourself. In order to create a body that can have a self, and I will talk about in this webinar about maybe self is something else than ego. Maybe you do not only have an ego, an astral or a psychological ego, but maybe in you there's an I am, a center, a core. And with coming upright, you know, you need to come to yourself, you need a body that can come to itself. And then when you're 1 year old for the first time, you do it physiologically. And 1 year later, you say suddenly, Jaapie. No, no longer Jaapie. I want a piece of bread. For the first time, the child discovers the first person reality. I want a piece of bread. Till then, the child talks about itself in the third person. Jaapie wants a piece of bread. And maybe coming upright comes after 20 years when you say no to your father. You see, that is what I think soul life is. Gestures. Soul life can be understood as gestures. All the words, the words, the nouns that we use in psychology are actually biological words, like changing your position, changing your mind. I mean, all these words, that is mentality, that is soul speech. And soul speech is body speech. That's the secret. And then I found out that if I could save and could find a soul in a consciousness in the embryo, I had to go to that whole domain in my body where I also sleep. The embryo still is sleeping. Consciousness is not an activity of the soul. And that it comes because nowadays everybody talks about the head. Because you have something in your head. What do you have in your head? Thoughts, ideas, hopes, or maybe stupid ideas like Mr. Trump. They are in your head. And that's why we think that our mind is only here. No, your mind is not only here. I learned that in the embryo, the first activity of your mind is that everywhere in your body, your mind, your soul, your I am, call it your spirit, whatever, is shaping, performing the body. So soul or consciousness is not located in the head. in the head, it reaches a stage of awareness, of awakening. But your liver is even as intelligent as your brain. Your liver is a very intelligent organ. It's a very wise organ. Your liver knows already for 1 million of years what to do with cholesterol. But with our head, we still don't know what we have to do with cholesterol. So there's knowing, there is feeling, but it is in a morphological way. Soul is everywhere. Soul is psyche as it exists. And then the last discovery, and for that I need a slide. I will show you a slide. One of the persons that inspired me very much was Rumi. Rumi, that is wisdom from the 13th century. And Rumi, believe it or not, has told a lot about embryo. And Rumi gave me a quote, and then I start to think, yes, that's what my students discovered, because my students discovered on the dissection room that the bodies that they found there, the bodies of anatomy, the body of your science, the body of your anatomy atlas, that it has nothing to do with the dead person I first showed to my students. Because my students thought that they would come to the dissection room and see their dead bodies, dead corpse, and they didn't find that. Yes, the first body, that was a naked man, very dead. And they didn't know what to do with it. And they were upset, and they were, yeah. And then we went to the other bodies, the dissected body, the specimens. And then always one of the students said, well, but these bodies here in the dissection have nothing to do with this body. That's a very great discovery. And you should honor your students when they discover that the living body that you are has nothing to do with the body of anatomy that they think that is in you. Your brain is not producing consciousness. Your brain is a very important, necessary condition for consciousness. But there's only correlation between soul activities and mind activities and the brain. Yes, there's a deep correlation. But Rumi says loud and clear the next thing. And that is here. Here it comes, sharing. Yes. Study me as much as you like. You will not know me, for I differ in 100 ways from what you see me to be. Put yourself behind my eyes and see me as I see myself, for I have chosen to dwell in a place you cannot see. No one else is able to experience the soul life in you. No one else can experience the pain that you have. No one else can have the experience of how it is to be in this body. No one else can do that. You are the only one that know about that. And don't let them take it away from you. If you lose that, you will lose your soul, your heart, your mind, your spirit. And that is why I suddenly got from another source, and that was anthroposophy, but also polarity thinking. Descartes was interpreted as if we have a duality, if we have soul and body, mind and body, spirit and body. And we understood Descartes as, oh, he's talking about a duality, a twofold in us. And that's not true. Descartes said something else. He didn't say, I think, therefore I am. He said, cogito, ergo sum. And cogito comes from cogitare and means asking questions. Descartes tried to find out on what things can I always, on all the things, he wanted to know which things can I doubt on. I can doubt on the colors that I see because maybe someone else sees it different. But there's one thing I cannot doubt on, and that is that there is something in me that is thinking, that is feeling, that is perceiving, and that something in me must be completely different, completely from a different matter, substance, or quality as the body, because otherwise I could not know my body. And there again, you have the number 2. And that is the fascinating thing. Nowadays, many people experience mind and body as something that is split, that has nothing to do with each other. It has to do with each other. There is no mind without body, no spirit without matter, no matter without spirit, because it's a oneness, it's a polarity. Your mind is everything what your body is not. So simple it is. And if you then go to an embryo, you see that from the very beginning on, there comes in all directions, in all dimensions of the body, there comes a polarity. Out of the 1, there constantly comes a 2, a polarity. And then there comes up an in-between. And in between, there is the space to be. And we'll see that in the embryo, and I will show it in my course, that you do not begin with 3 so-called germ layers. That is bloody anatomical thinking. That in the beginning you had 3 layers, ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, and that the body is built up from organs that are derived from the ectoderm and the mesoderm and the endoderm. There is no ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. There's an ectoderm and there's a mesoderm that are body walls. And in between comes the meso. And again, there's the genius of Blechschmidt. He said, between these body walls, your outside body wall and your inside body wall, your parietal body wall and your visceral body wall, there's innerness. There is inner tissue. And now every osteopath should wake up, because that's your fascia. That is the fascia. That is the web, that is the weaving, the matrix in which all the organs will be embedded and connected and whatever. So the threefoldness is actually not 1, 2, 3. It is like the yin-yang. You have yin and you have yang. And together they are one. And together they create the third. So easy it is. And there you have to look for your soul. So soul is morphology, it is physiology, it is psychology, it is maybe even mentality, maybe it's even sociology, because you also can think of a society that is shaped and organized according to the principles of a living being. And then on the top is not the brain. On the top is the heart. The heart is the center organ of your body, the center organ of your soul, not your brain. Your brain comes about 8 weeks later. Your brain serves only one thing, and that is consciousness, but not your soul. Of course, you have conscious soul life, but you also have soul life in your heart. You also have soul life in your guts and in your liver. So the embryo learned me to get rid of my anatomy and no longer locate the soul, certainly not in one special organ like the brain.